Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Byron, how are you, Byron?
I'm very well, thanks, Abdul. How are you doing?
No complaints. Well, good evening to all the viewers out there and to everybody on this beautiful Wednesday evening, the 11th of August, our 23rd episode, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, last week we had a very interesting show with the Alfa Romeos. It brought back some very old memories, or good memories, should I say. And, well, tonight we have the karting guys on. I mean, what I know about karting is very little. What Byron knows about karting is a lot. And what the rest of the guys know about karting is more than that. So we have very, very interesting guests tonight. But just before we go into the guests and introduce them, I just want to thank each and everyone for logging on tonight and watching the show. And if you don't want to miss out in the future, just subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we're on Facebook as well, Witzenberg, Motor Talk with Witzenberg, or Motor Praatjies met Witzenberg. I'm not sure what it comes up as. And Byron, maybe you just want to introduce the sponsors and stuff there?
Yes, indeed. Of course, we have 435 Oils. Thank you very much to them for sponsoring the show from the beginning of the year, basically, actually, if my memory serves me correct. And they've also assisted us in getting on the StreamYard and getting a good feed. And then, of course, BH Media. I can never forget BH Media. That, of course, Bevan Harris, and he is the one helping us with all of our graphics and all decals and everything like that. So always a big thank you to him for making a lot of this possible.
Yeah, Byron, we have 1 hour to get through the show, and we have 10 hours of information. So that's going to be quite interesting. But just before we get into the guests and who the special guests are tonight, I just want to talk a little bit about the Gymkhana coming up on Saturday, the 14th of August, this Saturday at 10 o'clock. It's going to be an awesome Gymkhana. We haven't had one in a while. Well, the last one was in the rain. It was actually awesome. The driving was good and it was a lot of fun, not for the officials. But also just maybe quickly inform you guys of a initiative that Witzenberg Motor Club started together with YQ for Hope, which is a non-profit organization, and in conjunction with an educational institution called Northlink Colleges. So basically the bottom line is we've realized from the Gymkhana perspective that, we don't really participate actively in giving back to society from Gymkhana, and I'm not sure that applies to the motorsport as a whole. But what we've decided to do is our entry fees that we pay towards our entering our events, we are taking a huge percentage of that and we're giving it to Youth YQ for Hope, the non-profit organization I spoke about. And that is going to fund a bursary fund for anybody that qualifies, that wants to do anything, study anything in the motor-related industry. So at the end of the day, we're not just going to have a driver coming through the ranks there, but we might have someone that's an engineer, somebody that's a panel beater, somebody that's whatever. And that's kind of the initiative that we started and launched on the 9th, on Monday the 9th. And we hopefully want to maybe talk about it tonight on the show as far as karting is concerned. I don't expect them to make a decision, but just the idea. And maybe we can explore and expand this idea into the rest of the motorsport disciplines, and who knows, we can make a huge difference to society out there. Okay, so first up, I just want to, the first guest doesn't need any introduction. Claudio Piazza Musso. I mean, that name is like kind of on everybody's tongue. It rhymes actually. So I guess when Claudio was born, it was like his parents gave him the name. He's going to be a racing driver, and we're going to call him Claudio. And yeah, Claudio, good evening. Thanks for being on the show tonight.
Hi, Abdul. Hi, Byron. Yeah, thanks for inviting us on the show so we can talk about karting, which we are all very passionate about.
Absolutely, and we know so little about karting. That's the beautiful part, where you guys are going to give us some insights to what's happening in the karting there. And then just quickly, next up, I want to just introduce Tristan de Nobrega, which is Claudio's son, and he's an avid karter. Hi, Tristan. Thanks for being on the show.
Hi, guys.
Tonight.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me back on the show. Very excited tonight to speak about what we're so passionate about and what we enjoy so much, and what people don't know much about. So yeah, let's get into it and chat about it. Are we cool?
Absolutely. And next up we have Brad Wadeley, who I've seen for the first time. I might have seen him at the karting. I don't actually go to the karting, but Brad, you have you run the shop at the karting at the karting track at Killarney, I assume, and also you do a couple other things as well.
Yes, that's correct. I do run the kart store at Killarney, Kart Sport. And yeah, basically very excited as well to chat about karting and give guys a better insight into what it's actually about. And yeah, thank you, Byron and Abdul, for inviting me onto the show.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And like I said, we just need to, give people more information, more insight. I think get involved, maybe some history, and that type of thing. And then last but not least, just the chairman of the Karting Association, John Coetzee. Welcome to our show tonight, John.
Yes, Adele, thank you very much for having us. And we're all representing the Killarney karting section of that. But yes, welcome and thank you very much for the invite.
No, thank you so much for being here tonight. And okay, I'm not going to take much time because we have a lot to cover, and we only have an hour, while we now have 53 minutes to be exact. So I'm going to start off with Claudio. Claudio has been around for a long time. He's been multiple champions in karting, and they obviously they transgressed into rallying. But tonight we're going to talk about karting. Claudio spoke about rallying a couple of programs ago. So Claudio, just maybe tell us where you started. What age? Why did you start? How did you start? That type of thing.
I think, firstly, from my side, my family my dad was into motorsport for many years. So he started in karting himself when he was a youngster. I don't know if Byron's got those pictures I sent
Yes.
of my dad, basically in a kart way back in the 1960s. So there you can see a kart was a little bit different from today. That is my dad there in the number 7 kart.
Sure.
And then, they used to put those little carts on the roof of their road car and take it off down to the track and race and drive them, and then put it back on the roof of their car, and off they went. So very, very early beginnings. So I think the DNA was there. I actually was born in Kenya, Nairobi, and my dad was out wrecking for the East African Safari when I was born. So for me, it was in my blood. So there's his little Fiat 650 with his cart on the roof there, on the roof rack. So since I can remember, it's always been motorsport in my family. The funny thing is, my dad didn't let us go motor racing until I was 18. So he was rallying and racing himself, and we were his service crew for the rallying and helped him with all his racing, basically, and building cars, etc. So I only got karting at the age of 18. And I was so hungry and so desperate to get into motor racing. So I finally got this opportunity. And I actually went to karting because my brother, older than me, he basically, when he started racing, he decided he's going rallying. And my dad says, you can't both go rallying. He couldn't afford to have us both rallying. And then he said, you have to service for your brother, and then you choose a different form of sport, motorsport, and then your brother will help you with that. So I was basically told, you doing karting, big brother's going rallying. And that was at the age of 18. And we've just all our lives have been involved in it. And also when I started that first year, I won the championship. So then we had this strange kart that we had brought from Italy, PCR, which no one had seen before. And almost immediately people wanted this kart because it was quick and competitive. And it just eventually became a business as well. So we were racing and starting to run a business on the sideline because people wanted these karts. And eventually we were totally engrossed in karting, where we were the full importers, and we used to import all the equipment for all the different categories, which I'm sure Brad will touch on later, all the different categories we have now, which are all mainly based on road tax and rock karts, which is a bit different to what we had back in the day. But pretty much that's the history.
So Claudio, those cars that your dad raced, they looked like they were pedal cars actually with no engines in it. It looked like those two pedals, like you got those cars in the old days where you got to push both your feet and the carts kind of move with a chain on. Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, can you just believe how it's transformed from what it was to what it is, eh?
Yeah, you can see there they didn't even have bumpers or anything like that, and then eventually they started adding bumpers for safety, and then it progressed into what we see now with the body work. Basically, that body work is to stop wheels interlocking. The nose cone is to absorb when you have a crash. Now they even have bumpers on the rear to stop the wheels climbing over each other. So quite a lot of it's still a basic kart, but if you really look into it, there's a lot of technology and a lot of change over the years.
Okay, that's interesting. So your karting career started at the age of 18. What year was that?
That was 1987.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah, well, now we're just trying to work out your age. Okay, we got that. So I mean, that's cool. Okay, maybe I just want to go on to Tristan, because you're kind of part of the family. So maybe just talk a little bit about your history in karting, Tristan. How you ended up in karting. Well, what can I say? And how was it for you?
So I also grew up at the track. My uncles used to race. My cousins all used to race in karting. And unfortunately, I just didn't have the money to go racing when I was younger. So yeah, I was just always at the track, always watching, always learning, trying to see what the guys are doing in their karts and stuff like that. And then, yeah, when Claudio came into our lives, then he obviously still owned the karting shop. So through that, he was able to give me my first kart. So when I was 16, he actually gave me my first kart, which was a PCR, old chassis. I think it was a 2006 chassis, I think. Anyway, so yeah, I had two left hands at that stage. Had no idea what a kart was in terms of how you can build one and how you do it, set up or anything like that. So before I was even allowed to drive, he said to me, okay, you need to strip it and check everything and go through everything, clean everything. And only once you've stripped it completely and rebuild it, then you can drive. So that took me about a year to strip it and to learn what's going on. And then, yeah, from there progressed and slowly found out where everything goes. And then, yeah, started driving at the age of 17 and started racing at 19. So, yeah.
Very, very interesting. So it was kind of a year. Well, if you had stripped the kart in 2 months, you'd have started earlier, right? So
maybe a bit sooner, just maybe.
Okay, maybe Byron, you just want to get through some of the comments there on the side, I see.
Yeah, I just want to say good evening to a few folks over here. There's a few familiar names that have come in here. Andrea Croy has said, good evening, everyone. Great to see that karting is being featured, and I think it's brilliant. I know the Croys are also very involved in the rallying side as well as DJ Boyson over here as well. He raced quite nicely on the weekend, and he got himself a victory this weekend in the Formula Libras. He said, hi, Claudio and Tristan. And then Cornelia Visser. And Cornelia Visser says, great family sport. And I know always families and family dynasties have always been very involved in karting all over the world.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting because if I look at when I think Andreas said that we featured in karting, actually this happened 2 weeks ago because I had Ashfaq on, who's a good friend of mine, Ash, that races Formula Libre and the Formula Fords and stuff. And we were kind of chatting. I said, Ash, I mean, even single-seaters are very, very few people know about single-seaters. I mean, I said, why don't you and Rob get onto the show and we can, talk about it and discuss it and blah, blah, blah. And when we were done with the show, we were having a chat offline. And I said, what do you think that, he said, what? What about karting? I said, well, I don't know anybody in karting. He said, I know Claudio. And that's how the connection came. And that's, and that's exactly why we're sitting here tonight. So, okay. So Bradley, you're up next. You have the karting shop and, I hear about PCR and this and that, and I don't even understand some of the stuff and road tax and blah, 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 blah. Maybe just not everything, but start off maybe with the karting shop, how you got into it, what do you do, that type of thing.
Okay, so much a similar story to Tristan in the sense of growing up, I never did any karting myself. Had friends that did it, also spent lots of time at the track, something that I always wanted to do, and kind of fell into it after school. After matric, started working for Gary Ferree, and that was my sort of intro into karting as from the working side of things. Shortly after that, Gary Ferree partnered up with a guy by the name of Nick Generakis, which was pretty much a start of Kart Sport, which is our shop here at Killarney. shortly after that, Claudio actually bought the company, and I think that was from about 99, if I'm not mistaken. No, sorry, probably earlier than that. Hey, Claudio?
2002, end of 2001.
Yeah, it was around about there that Claudio took over. And pretty much until I think it was 2016, worked under Claudio. Learned a hell of a lot. One of the OGs of karting, been him. Lots and lots of stuff that I picked up there over the years. And now pretty much running the shop from the sales side through to the engine building, and obviously promoting of different classes and stuff that we have in our sort of category that we race under.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the interesting stuff later on, like, the actually engine building. That excites me. I mean, coming from a car background, not cars. So I like all those intricate things and tires and all those type of things. So just before we get into all that interesting classes and stuff, I just want to say hi to John. John is the chairman of the Karting Association at Killarney. Hi, John. And how did you get into karting? How did you end up being the chairman?
Yes, this is actually the second time round. Basically, I did a 4-year stunt 2 years ago, and of course, the last 2 months and that we basically put me back into the seat. But I must say that I think it's easier this time. We've actually got very good committee members, which Claudio and our team. We actually selected now that we basically have a very broad spectrum of very diverse people on our committee, and naturally to bring our basic sport. Our whole emphasis basically on Killarney is to basically create the sport, is create the membership, and to increase and feed it to main club. So that is the perspective of what we stand for. And naturally, a lot of our competitors and that have basically grown through the sport from the age of 5 right through to DD2. Basically, when you go to masters, and that's you end up. I think at one stage we had about a nearly 60-year-old driving seniors, but I mean, of course, the age group, the old people have dropped down to about over the 30, 35s, and that's where we are at the moment. Yes, but the whole insight of karting is to grow and against make it a family sport, of which Andrea Croy basically alluded to, and we missed them actually quite a bit at the track, and hopefully they will come back, and hopefully a lot of viewers that are on the show, that are actually viewing the show, basically make sure that we plant these seeds that they actually can basically re-enter and hopefully basically do karting that and grow through their family and that and friends. Thank you.
Okay, so about anything that you want to just ask a couple of questions like you normally do, some interesting stuff that you normally have up your sleeve there?
You have a lot of confidence in me, Abdul. Say I have a lot of up my sleeve at the moment. No, I think just a comment as well, and just to add to everything. I started my commentary career in 2009, and the very second race meeting I did, I think it was a karting Nashville. So I was thrown right in the deep end there. So if you think that karting is just for up and coming young drivers, it's for up and coming young commentators as well. And let me tell you one thing: close racing, lots of competitive spirits. And it always takes me to this day as well that, you get so, when you have a big karting event, when you walk into Killarney or a karting track, the smell and the sounds just catch me every single time. So that's always proud to always see that as well.
Well, the two-stroke sounds like it's kind of very unique, I would assume. The sound of the two-stroke engines and the smell of that, I don't know what they use, F-gas or petrol, whatever pump fuel, I'm not too sure what they use. Okay. So going back to Claudio, so your career, like you said, started when you were 18. You went up from there, and what happened after that? I mean, what championship titles did you got? I believe you raced overseas. There's a whole lot of stuff that you did in your career and still doing.
Yeah, the karting basically based here in South Africa and won some championships locally. On the national side and some regionals, and then we did go overseas, and in the past it used to be sort of a one-off event. You enter the world finals and you're up against the factory drivers which had special tires, special engines, etc. So we never ever stood a chance as outsiders to go there, but it was always good experience and a awesome to be with the top class of the world. And then Rotax introduced a completely different formula worldwide, where basically the engine is sealed, and then they ran a world final where the tires are all the same for everybody, the engines are all the same, the chassis are all the same. So then I managed to qualify, because you have to race locally in your own country. And nowadays you have to be a national champion to qualify to go to the world. Sometimes there's a seat for the guy that comes second in the championship, and then you get a ticket to go to the world final. So I had the privilege to get to the world finals, and I managed to win a world final in Malaysia in 2002 on the island of Langkawi. And then a couple of years later, in 2006, I went and did the full European Championship with Rotax and managed to win the European Championship. So that was from the karting side. And then karting-wise, I haven't done a lot lately, but then moved on also to main circuit as well, where I started racing Formula 4 single-seaters, won a national championship there, did a little bit of Group N racing, and then there was always this love for rallying in the background. So I've got an opportunity to do one off-road event, which was quite something else. And then eventually, many, many years later, I managed to get hold of my brother's old rally car, which was the old Fiat Uno Turbo. And we converted it into a 1600, and I did a couple of regional rallies with that. Absolutely loved it, and then got an opportunity to do the nationals with Tristan and Toyota, and did 3 years of national rallying. And all 3 years we finished second in the championship. We kept breaking crown wheel and pinions, unfortunately. And then biggest problem is generally funding. So my racing career or sport or hobby came to an end purely from the funding side of things. I had also moved down to Cape Town and then focused on the business, running the karting business here in Cape Town.
Okay.
Now I just do the odd race when sometimes a friend or a client lets me drive the race cars. I do the odd race. Other than that, I'm not racing.
Okay, but I mean, you've had a illustrious career in very many different disciplines of motorsport, and that's actually interesting. So I'm going to put some pressure on Tristan now. You heard that resume, Tristan. You probably have one of the best mentors in the game at the moment. And where do you see yourself, where you are now and where you're going in the future, or where you're going forward from here?
Unfortunately, Claudio's problem is kind of generational in terms of funding. So my racing career isn't happening if there's no money. So that's just the reality of it. So sticking to regional racing here, doing what I can. When I do get opportunities, I'm the first one to put my hand up and put the helmet on, go racing. But yeah, it's tough, especially with COVID happening. It's just tough for everyone out there. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess unfortunately, motorsport is one of those sports that I don't know. It's just one of those strange sports because you need to have the money first to get into a team, and then they start paying you, if at all. It's weird. It's like you take long to get recognized. So it's it's a passion for most people, and it's a very few. I mean, somebody like yourself or Claudio, who's got the talent, but just didn't have the money. I mean, and that's kind of an ongoing issue with motorsport, I think. But when I come to John, maybe we can talk about how we're going to remedy that. Not remedy, maybe what options do we have in the future for potential champions that just didn't have the funding. Okay, so coming back to Brad. Brad, I heard about road tax and PCR and I don't know what other stuff and classes. Take us a little bit through that. What different classes the pookies can start at 5 years old, and just enlighten us about that.
Okay, so we basically there's two different series that we run. I'm obviously a Rotax shop. Rotax is the engine that we obviously run. In our sort of categories and that we run in us. It starts in Bambino, which is basically the year that you turn 5 up until 9 years old. It's a little 3 horsepower Coma engine. So it's actually, funny enough, it's the only one that's not a Rotax engine in our series, but runs along with our series. We have obviously there's a separate series which is Rock, which runs its own rules and a different engine. We basically have lots of crossovers in our series where it starts sort of, like I said, the Bambino goes Micromax is your next step up, which is 12 years old. Mini Max, been 9 to 14, goes to Junior Max after that, which is 12 to 14, I think it is. Senior Max, 14 to 99 years old. Obviously, people don't get that career. Been able to drive
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that.
You can basically drive it until your body. You can drive until your body gives up. And we've got DD2, which is 15 years old. Then obviously DD2 Masters, which is 32 years and older, or there's also 85 kgs. You can obviously run in that class as well. You classified as a master because it runs a heavier weight limit. So that's a brief overview of the different classes that we have.
Okay, so where does the 100
as you notice, there are crossovers with the age groups.
Okay.
That hasn't run for many years. With ours, starting from Micromax up to DD2, it's a 1.2 PC engine, water-cooled, electric start, nickel cylinder, so things like that. It's obviously the longevity of the engine is it's huge. To get more than 50 hours on an engine, which is obviously something that been trying to be cost effective and trying to keep people on track. It's very important that you're not rebuilding engines every 5 minutes.
Correct.
So from that viewpoint, the technology has got a lot better since the 100cc stuff. So yeah, it's basically just evolved, become more user friendly, and yeah, although your initial outlay is quite expensive, as with anything nowadays, but yeah, your enjoyment and the amount of mileage that you can actually do is phenomenal nowadays.
Okay, so all the cars except the Bambino, they run on the Rotax engines, the one you were talking about? No.
That's correct. The Bambino is a little 50cc air-cooled engine. Again, value for money, brilliant.
Okay. So we can talk about the technical stuff later on, and just maybe going over to John. John, so you were talking about how does somebody that enjoys karting or wants to get into karting, what are the options available to them to come and have a look, that type of thing, come and try, or they have to buy a kart, whatever. What do they need to do if they just want to come and test the waters?
Yeah, look, Abdul, there's, we're fortunate in Cape Town that we have two suppliers, which is naturally EMR and FTW. There are test drives for both, and actually there's two categories, which Brad has mentioned, from the Rotex and the Rock side of it. And the fact is that what you can do is we can contact the secretary, and of course we will forward that details. Well, actually, if you would like, I can actually forward the details to her, but there's also basically on an email address. Brad, have you got that email address by any chance? I don't have it with me.
I can look it up for you. Just give me a second.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you can contact Chantal Peters, which is our race secretary. And, of course, then she will basically then email both companies and that to arrange test drives. And those test drives are available on Tuesday from 1 o'clock onwards. And then, of course, what we're also trying to do is to promote our club series. And that is basically run by basically Sean, which is now the class rep. So yeah, we have the diversity of anybody that's willing to or wanting to come and test drive, so they can test drive through the full range of the series, and that can be from the 5-year-old right up until the masters of the 32. But I mean, there's also a class that goes beyond that as well, which is basically a 6-shifter KZ2. That's all under the Rock series, but that's actually very, very fast. But I think from the start, if there's any youngsters, then of course they will run from the Bambino class and that right through to Micromax, Mini Mini Rock, and of course the senior series and the junior series. So anybody that's basically willing to or wanting to come for those test drives, we have the facilities available.
Okay, do those test drives, is there any cost attached to that? Do they have to pay anything, or how does it actually work?
The test drives are no charge.
Okay.
And basically, those two are available from both companies and at the karting track.
Okay. And then from there, obviously, they can decide what they want, which you guide them into what is the best possible route for them, obviously.
Yeah, I look at Bradley and Ricky, and they will basically take a look at them. And what they will basically do is have a look at the age group, and then, of course, supply that kart and that which they will fall into. And actually, it's also weight perspective as well. So the fact is they will put them into which class they will basically fit, and let them test drive that class.
Okay. Baden, I see you have a few comments here. You might want to get through some of those quickly.
Yeah. Yes. First and foremost, Brad did share with us the email address for karting, and that will be wpmckarting@gmail.com. So you'll see it in the comments over there on your YouTube and Facebook. So that is the email address you can contact if you have any interest. And then, finally, I like questions like this because they make me sound smart. And it's Dave Hawkins that is asking this particular question. He says, "Hi, guys. What do the tires cost these days? And is there a limit on how many you use?" So maybe we can go around the studio, if you could put it that way.
Okay, maybe Bradley looks like the guy from the karting shop. And maybe you can just tell us.
So tires vary from about, I think it's 2,500 up to 3,660 Rand, which is the most expensive one that we run. Tires are limited. That's for a complete set. Basically, you are limited on the tire usage. Regionally, for practice, you can obviously use as much as you want to. But when a race day starts, the tires that you obviously, from qualifying, if you decide to put it on then, from qualifying, they have to be on. That's what you would be using the whole day. So you can't put multiple sets on during the day. And then nationally, we've also restricted the amount of tires that you're allowed to use on a race weekend. Just to try and reduce.
Trying to reduce the cost, obviously, of the tires.
That's correct.
Yeah, Claudio, maybe you can tell us. In your other, I assume all these tires are slicks when you're not riding in the wet, obviously. So they're all slick tires.
That's correct. Generally, we run a full slick in karting, and then there is a rain tire specifically for rain with obviously treads on it.
Yeah.
And what Brad was saying, when we say a complete set, that means your set of 4 tires.
Correct.
And that when you're saying nationals, they also limit on the Friday, you're only allowed 1 set. You can't come with 2-3 sets. So if there's 10 sessions, you can't come with 10 sets of tires. Right. They limit it to keep the costs down.
Yeah. So if I compare in your days when you started karts to compare to today's time, is there a big difference in the technology of the tires? Has it evolved quite a bit? Or from that time to this time?
The tires nowadays, they give a good grip level, but they also last longer. In my day, if you wanted a tire that lasted longer, you had to go for a more durable compound, and then your lap times would be much slower. As soon as we went to a softer, faster tire, if you went out on what we call a green track, in other words, there's no rubber on the track, there hasn't been a lot of karts going around, you would literally do 4 or 5 laps and you'd destroy a set of tires. Where nowadays you can take a reasonably soft tire, go out on a green track, and you can do 70, 80, 100 laps easy before you destroy the tire. So definitely the technology is improved. You're getting a lot more bang for your buck basically nowadays.
Okay, Tristan, so you kind of fit in. So you come with the old set of tires and the guy comes with a new set of tires and you have the same kart. Is it going to be a big difference in your time?
That was my specialty back in the day, rocking up with second-hand tires and trying to go racing with the guys on new tires. So it can be done. It's the nature of karting is it's super close racing, as Byron touched on earlier. So it is doable, and yeah, you can go racing that way.
Just Tristan, can I just ask a question quickly? Just want to ask a question. Well, it is generally known that when at nationals, a lot of the top guys use a set of tires once and then they throw them away, and that's where all the budget guys go in and grab them out of the bins or wherever. So is that a regular thing with you as well, or with any other racer? You know, that's the way I think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Very much like your second race ever commentating was a national. My second race in karting was the Cape Town National. So I was also thrown in the deep end there. And yeah, when I started racing, like I say, budgets just wasn't there. So I did often look for tires. If guys use a set of tires, look, they wouldn't do one session. They would definitely do a bit more than that. But they would do a few, and when they decide it's no good, then they go on a new set and they just leave it aside. So you go pick them up and they turn into practice tires for you. So it's just the way you had to do it sometimes. But something I did want to touch on, we were just speaking about the evolution of karting. I started in karting it was 2015 when I started racing. That was my first year. I raced in two classes. I raced in Senior Max and in DD2. More so in the DD2 class, which is a shifter. So it's in the Rotax series. It's got 2 gears. And even from when I started in 2015 to now, the engines have changed. The tire compounds have changed. So karting is one of those sports where it's continuously evolving. They're always bringing out new things for the engines, updates, and all that kind of stuff. So the manufacturers really care about the sport, which is good to see. And like Brad touched on, it's all about the longevity of the sport and trying to make costs better for everyone. So it's really a community sport and a family sport, which is what you want. So, yeah.
Okay, I just want to go to John quickly. John, you've been the chairman for, 4 years and you're going to take another stint now. Obviously, somewhere in between, COVID came in. And motorsport, kind of took a dip. I think all motorsport, it took a dip actually before COVID. And with COVID, it was even worse because there was no spectators. And how did it actually affect you guys as from the karting perspective?
Yeah, John, maybe
what did you guys do as well to kind of, make it better?
Well, I think when COVID was, when we had to basically isolate completely, I think the guys grew hungry to get back onto the track. And of course, by the time they had actually opened up, there was multiple people, and theoretically on a practice day, it looked like a race day, where everybody wanted to race each other and get the adrenaline rush coming back. But now after the COVID, naturally we missed the spectators quite a bit. And I think today, as we sit here now, we dropped back to about 60 limited people racing on a per race day. And of course, we are now glad to say we're basically edging up towards 80, 85. Naturally, some people have COVID. They had to pull out of the regional races. Then what happens, there were back-to-back national races. And I mean, that you would end up to about 110. And then, of course, we've had now 2 nationals, which is actually the Rotex Series National this year. And we've had a Rock National this year. So we've been basically blessed by people basically, wanting to get back onto the track. Some people that have been away for about 2 years have come back to the track. And that's why I said Andrea and the Coy family, and that, we basically miss them. And of course, their son had basically grown up now quite considerably. And hopefully that people like that would basically then consider coming back to karting. And I think overall is that it's a very, very safe space now at the moment. A lot of protocols in place, and actually there's limited, so we can't wait until the actual sport gets opened up. We can have lots of spectators. And then what the growing factor that we want to do is to bring the 4-stroke series in, which will not be on the same race day. But of course, that becomes the affordability where you can actually run a 4-stroke kart, and you can actually have 3 members, driving on a 3-hour or a 2-hour. We're busy knocking that around. And actually, we are going to be putting our proposal through to Main Club for the approval to run the series. And by that same token, it makes it very much affordable for spectators and that to turn, or basic karters like yourself where you run indoor. You know, at the moment to run outdoor on our tracks, you'll probably find it completely different to indoor karting, and actually much faster. But I think just putting that fun back into the sport will actually basically fold over to the regional and national series, and then of course grow the sport completely. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe Claudio, I'm sure you know about the 4-stroke, 2-stroke thing. So how does it actually make it? Are the 2-strokes more expensive to run, or that is why you're going to go to the 4-stroke as well?
The difference is the 2-stroke is like, if I can explain it, it's like an F1. It's sort of your top of the range. The engines have got more power. So professional karting runs 2-strokes. Basically, you're getting more horsepower for a lightweight engine. So performance-wise, it's really good. The 4-stroke motor is a bit of a heavier motor, and it doesn't give as much horsepower as a 2-stroke. But the big difference is 4-stroke is very, very cheap. So, for example, a 4-stroke engine, a complete engine is about 5,000-6,000 rand. So your car, the overall cost of the cart is much cheaper to start off with. So it's a good entry level. They're a little bit easier to drive because they don't have this massive horsepower. So then you can run a slightly harder compound tire as well because you've got less horsepower. So that also saves money at the end of the day. But the big thing about 4-stroke karting, a 2-stroke, you can't do a 3-hour race with a 2-stroke engine. And also you have to keep lubing the chain and adjusting the chain tension and stuff like that on the single drive karts. Where the 4-stroke, they run a belt. So there's no lube, there's no problems with that. And the engine can just run forever. So all you have to do is put fuel in. So the 4-stroke bases itself on endurance racing. And then that means you bring more drivers in. So what happens is you get a team of 3 guys that together they buy the cart. So then it really becomes cheap because they're sharing the costs. It becomes a bit of a camaraderie thing as well, because now you're helping each other because you're teammates, you're working on the cart together. So it becomes a lot more social, a lot more fun, more of a team sport as well. So 4-stroke karting is something we are missing in the Western Province because all the other regions do have it. So it's a brilliant entry level, and not just entry level, because you get like the karters that are racing the 2-strokes can't wait for 4-stroke racing to come along because then they can have teammates. It's more fun, and more social and more relaxed, etc. So 4-stroke is absolutely an amazing thing to have, and John's doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get it off the ground.
Yeah, that is actually amazing because, you know, at the end of the day, motorsport is expensive, whether we like it or not. So bringing the cost down, sharing the cart, maybe even the 3 of you buy a cart, it cuts the cost in 3. And I mean, you all race the cart, and it's brilliant. Brad, just on a technical note here.
Just one thing quickly, Abdul, can I just ask as well for Claudio? Claudio, just from a rebuild perspective, compared to the 2-strokes, how much of a difference will there be? Will it be kind of the same for the 4-strokes?
Yeah, the 4-stroke just does a lot of mileage. You'll just run that thing forever. And when you go to indoor karting, they run 4-stroke engines, and you can see those things pound around forever and forever. And eventually, when it gets to that point of rebuilding it, they're so cheap as a complete unit, brand new. It's almost better to just buy a new engine and put it on, and off you go again for another year, kind of thing, you know. So yeah, you generally find they don't rebuild the 4-strokes; they just replace it with a new one.
Okay. Brad, I was going to ask you a question about the different chassis that you get. Maybe just enlighten the viewers and myself on the different types of karting chassis that you get and how they make a difference, you know, on race day and all those different things.
Okay, so obviously the junior classes, been for the younger kids, it'll be a slightly smaller chassis. Your Bambino will be the smallest in the range of stuff. Then it goes to a 950 chassis, which is predominantly used in your Micromax, Minimax, and Mini Rock classes. And then obviously you go to the bigger chassis from Junior Max up, which is basically for sort of the adult application. Across all of the chassis, it's obviously they're different manufacturers that make them. So you'll get, we do the CRG chassis. You get other, just Tony Kart, Cosmic, Burrell, lots of different manufacturers. It comes down to, obviously, you get a flavor of the month. What wins on Saturday sells on Monday. But generally, anything that's new and, that was evolving with the technology, like Tristan's put on or said earlier on. And yeah, basically that, it boils down to preference on, what you prefer, if you like the way the chassis looks, if you like dealing with the people that are bringing in the chassis, that's normally something that's an important factor as well to people when they choose what they want to buy.
Okay, so just on the chassis, and so the setup of a kart. When I say setup, I mean on a race car it's fine because I kind of grew up a lot in that arena. So when you're talking about setting up a kart, let's call it, there's no suspension, but the setup of the wheels and the alignment and stuff like that. Besides the engine, how important is that? Does it vary from driver to driver? How does it make a big difference? And on those technical things, how does that make a difference to different people, and how important is that?
It's probably the single most important thing when it comes to karting, other than your engine been on song. The tracks are constantly evolving, so you'll end up having to chase setup to obviously get the best out of the kart. It is a bit of an art form that obviously you evolve with, and you learn as you go along. Obviously, starting in the sport or set stuff like that isn't as crucial, but the closer you get to the front, obviously you need to obviously dial into the setups, and it really is something that becomes quite art form. You say there's no suspension, but you can do things such as caster, camber, ride height, width. There's lots of different things, different axles for different track conditions. So it really does become something that becomes a very, very important part of karting.
Absolutely. I mean, setup. I was sorry, Byron. I was talking to Ash about the single seaters, and I was amazed at how much stuff you can do. A small adjustment makes a huge difference to your time on the main circuit in a single seater. So I assume with a me coming from a tin top background, it's a bit different. It's not it's not that. It is crucial, but you can kind of get away with a little mistake. We're on a kart or on a single seater, it's not that. I mean, if you make a mistake, you're off.
Yeah, Abdul, I think from here, I mean, not to be the chairman, we also have a long history in karting. So naturally, tire pressures also play an incredible part, within releasing the kart off the track, and that, just like what Brad said, axles, rims, not building up too much heat within the tires. So there's a lot of aspects, and that evolves itself into a setup of the kart and making it go faster. Thank you.
That's amazing, Tristan. So, and I see
Abdul.
Sorry, you were saying something?
Sorry, Tristan. It was just for Brad over here as well that I was just going to ask a question. A number of years ago, I spoke to a karter, and he said the general consensus was that the Arrow was a more arrive and drive type of kart, whilst your CRGs and your Tony karts were the ones that you really had to work on for the setup. How true is that, and what is the difference, basically, if you could say, majorly between the different chassis?
It's a bit of a tricky question because any chassis, I believe you can get it to work. Some of them, obviously, your window is a little bit broader to be able to actually find the correct, when I say correct setup, obviously the one that's, probably, let's say, broader. It will work at different conditions a little bit better. We don't have to obviously, really try and a specific thing, just to obviously drive, I think nowadays the newer chassis are all pretty much similar to each other. I think you can get anything to win. So yeah, it really does, like I say, come down to sort of personal preference. It is a you are buying a specific tool for racing from a company that only makes chassis. It is their income. It is something that they do. So, they're going to get it right. It's not something that they're going to take lightly.
Tristan, I was going to ask you a question. I was going to say, okay, you're in a fortunate position because you have your dad as your mentor and mechanic. But if I look on karting days, mostly the dads are the mechanics. They're the technical advisors. They're everything. They're kind of the race managers and everything. So, how important is your feedback the understanding between you and I'm assuming that Claudio is there on race day when you're racing. And obviously to set up the kart and stuff like that, the feedback that you give him has got to be vitally important. So that relationship that you guys have and your understanding of a kart and how it reacts to what you do. Take us a little bit about, on race day. So you want to set the kart up with Claudio, and I'm assuming that he is going to be mentoring you when you do this on race day. How important is that, and how do you actually go about identifying what needs to be changed and things like that?
Yeah, so just quickly to touch on karting itself, it's basically the grassroots for any form of motorsport. So it's the best training tool to start in and to learn if you're ever wanting to make a career in motorsport. So even from a driver and engineer feedback, like you touched on now, your dad becomes your engineer and you're the driver. It's crucial that you start learning what the kart's doing, how is it handling, what does it feel like, so that you can communicate that to your dad or your engineer or whoever it is. And basically that relationship you form there is what you carry through when you move to main circuit, when you race overseas. It's something that really, without your engineer, you just can't go forwards. So that's quite cool to see that it happens at such a basic level in karting already. And then a typical race day, it's crucial to have, if you can't work on your kart yourself, to have a mechanic. There's plenty of guys available at the track. Like I said earlier, it's an awesome community to be a part of. So people are normally very helpful. If you're stuck on something, there's plenty of people you can go and ask for help. There's people like Brad, he's got the shop open on race days. They do all kinds of stuff other than selling parts. I mean, you can, if you've cracked your chassis on the day, you can even weld it for you. So there's lots you can do on race days. A typical day is you start with a warm-up session in the morning, go into qualifying where you put on your new tires and try and set the best lap you can. And then it leads into 3 races on the day, depending on what class you're on. If you're in the younger classes, they do fewer laps. And then the senior classes do up to 15 laps in a race. So yeah, like I say, there's 3 in a day. So it can get quite tiring at the end of the day. But it's lots of fun, lots of time to work on your kart, to change different things. You can change things in between the races. So if race 1 didn't go your way and you felt like you could find a little bit more time, maybe you change the axle, maybe you try different tire pressures. So there's lots to play with, lots of fun to be had. And from a technical side, it's really awesome because, like you said, small changes can make a huge difference, especially on only a 1 kilometer track. If you can find 1/10 of a second, it's a lot. So yeah.
I just want to go to I'll to John quickly, because I mean, just from the chairman perspective, I mean, are there any like really talented up and coming youngsters that you can, that's got a bright future in karting if they had the money, or if obviously that's the bottom line, if they had huge amounts of sponsorship, but let's assume that they do and they're gonna get it. Who's like really, really out there that you can identify that can really go places and maybe, be in the next, I don't know, who knows, maybe another Formula One driver like Lewis Hamilton or something?
Look, I think we've got very talented drivers. The Western Cape at the moment is exceptionally, I mean, when we go to nationals, we're all up on the first, second, third. But if we take a look at our our drivers from the national going to international, I mean, we still hold the record. I think we still got 10 World Championship titles, where I think the nearest rival from last year was still up to about 6. So we're still a major league overseas. And if we take a look at all the Van der Linders and Aberdeens, I mean, our guys are doing exceptionally well overseas, and that they've gone into DTM and that. And I mean, if you actually take a look at this weekend, I mean, we've got fantastic guys in that, even from the motorcycle perspective, from Brad and Darren, and then naturally from our DTM guys. But I think overall is that every time we go over to a World Series, you know, we virtually have every year a world title win in the different parts, you know, of the Rotex and that. And I think from the perspective at the moment, our guys are traveling and we look at the experience. I mean, that's really overseas, we drive continuously. Where we go over cold. But yes, I mean, Claudio can also tell you that that we still hold the record, and I think it's 10 still. Where Wesley Orr and Magados and that, and even Claudio, you know, and the guys in that. So yes, we still hold the record amount of time of international events that become world championships.
Yeah, there's one particular youngster that I want to ask, because we kind of come from the same community. I used to race with his dad in Clubman's. I think his name is Riza Levy. So his dad is, I think it's Anwar or Ibrahim, one of the two. I'm not too sure, from the Levy family, who also comes from
Ibrahim is his dad.
Yeah,
Yes.
Ibrahim, yeah. And his name is Riza, if I'm not mistaken, the youngster.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of heard that, I don't know much
That's
about
correct.
Karting, but I kind of heard that he won the national championship, was it last year?
Regional championship, I know. Brad, just confirm that if it was the national championship on Riza. But Riza's exceptionally talented.
Not nationally last year. He's pretty much over the last few years in the different disciplines that he's done, usually within the top 4 nationally, and most of the time top 3 regionally as well. So he is one of the drivers that we look after. Is an exceptionally talented little driver as well.
Okay, because I had a little chat with his dad, like I said, because we both used to race with his dad in Clubman's and stuff, and he was telling me that, you know, the only thing that's going to stop him is basically money. And it's not only him. I mean, there's obviously a couple of other youngsters out there as well that would have a bright future, provided that they had like really good sponsorship. So maybe Claudio, maybe you want to just, I don't know, you had the same problem. So I mean, money was always the issue with a lot of talented people. How do we actually overcome that? I mean, is there any way to do it? It was just you get the break and that's it. And you don't get the break, you don't get it.
Yeah,
I think what makes it tougher for us South Africans is we have to travel to like a Europe or something like that. So that's the real difficult part, because if you're living in Europe and you're French or something like that, and let's say there's some opportunity in Italy, it's not that far away, and you're always a stone's throw away from home. So that's really the big difference from South Africa. Yes, money is an issue, but you know, at the end of the day, you have to do your homework in South Africa. In other words, you're racing here, win here. And I always say to everybody that I work with, win the championship. So in other words, if you want to go like the Van der Linders are winning in DTM in Europe, and it's millions and millions of euros to get there, etc. But now, why don't you just stay at home and win a karting championship? And then if you're really that talented, go to main circuit. And that's exactly what the Van der Linders, etc. did. They won in South Africa. They were established in South Africa. They got the experience here. Then they made that trip overseas. Now, this is to me where everything falls apart, is when you go overseas. And it's not so much the money factor, because if you're really talented and you go and race overseas and you do even smaller stuff, it doesn't have to be the big sort of expensive formulas, people will notice you. You will be able to find a way to go racing. The biggest problem is most drivers get homesick and then they can't stay in Europe on their own. Now, why were the Van der Linders successful? They moved to Germany and they were living in Germany. Pepper joined them as well. So it was the two Van der Linders and Pepper that were living in Germany. I trained a driver by the name of David Perrell. He eventually, he was much older. He was a grown man. So maybe from that perspective was a bit easier, but he literally left everything behind at home, went and said, okay, I'm moving overseas. I'm going to try and make a racing career out of it. And he moved overseas and he was sleeping on the floor. He had no furniture. He was eating on the floor. He had it hard. Now, that is where most successful, talented drivers fall apart. They can't deal with that. So then they come running back home and they live the good life at home. And that's why their careers never really take off.
Yeah. I remember David Peddle because we had him on the show yonks back, if I'm not mistaken, Byron. And I
Yes,
think
we
he
did.
drove. Yeah, he drove last Saturday in the 24-hour at Spa, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yes, he
Yeah,
did. And remember, he's also on the entry list for the 24 Hours of Le Mans that will be happening in August. Sorry, not August. Next. Is it next month or is it this month? I can't remember now.
I think it's next
because
month.
I know it was moved from his traditional June slot, but he's on it, and that's the main thing. And that was the big ambition a number of years ago when we spoke to him for the first time when he first quit racing. And then what happens is came back to racing, and then of course was in the Blancepan series, and working his way up. If there's a lesson in determination that we can learn from anybody, I think it is David Perrell.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think if I may.
But there's a classic example. He wanted to go to Le Mans, and it took him many years to get to Le Mans because you can't just buy a drive and go to Le Mans, even if you've got all the money in the world. You actually have to get seedings and qualify through the smaller or the lower categories. And then eventually when you get the license and the qualification, then you find a team that obviously wants you to go or help you to go, and then you can go to Le Mans. So it's not an easy process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I guess nothing successful is going to come easy. You got to strive and work hard for it, and a lot of sleepless nights, I suppose. Byron, we're kind of out of time. So any other thing that you want to just share with us, and maybe I'll go around one more lap with everybody and just and take it from there, Byron.
I think Abdul, just to put things into perspective, and when listening to Claudio earlier on, I always remember a lot of South Africans going overseas, going to Europe for the World Finals. And the problem is, like Claudia is saying, as well, these youngsters from Europe, they know the circuits, they have their own carts, they have their own accommodation, they have all of that they know very well. But then us South Africans go over and have to rent a cart, have to get onto a circuit we don't know at all because we used to karting down here in South Africa. So maybe, Claudia, you can also put that also into perspective for us as well, coming as a green racer from South Africa to Europe and going against an angry bunch of very talented Europeans.
Yeah, I think that just comes. There's the what we call the 10,000 hour rule. If you do karting for 1,000 hours, you're not going to cut it when you go overseas. If you do 10,000 hours of karting in South Africa and you get the mileage and the experience and the maturity here, when you go over there, believe in yourself and go and do your thing like we have done as many South Africans. And just touching on what John was saying earlier, I think we've got something like 16 world titles, and the closest is something like 10 or 12 behind us. So South Africans, we're very competitive here, and we've got the experience here. Maybe the first time you go to a world final, it's a big show. There's a lot of different things you've got to deal with. So maybe you won't win it the first time you go, but eventually after 2-3 times, you'll get the experience and you definitely have a good chance of winning.
Okay. That's some good advice. I mean, whoever's listening and whoever wants to listen, whoever's going to listen to it in the future, because it's actually, the advice is so good because it's coming from people with wisdom and experience. Tristan, just in closing, coming back to you, where do you see yourself, with your karting, with your racing? It's going to be a career, or are you going to pursue this as a passion and then do something else as a career? Where do you see yourself?
So with Claudio, he started a company called Race Driver South Africa. So it's purely based on driver training. So we're based at the karting track. We train drivers currently throughout the age groups. We've got Bambino drivers. We've got TD2 drivers in their 30s. So we've got 4-year-olds all the way up to 35-year-olds. So we're doing that. We're involved in the sport still. I'm currently mechanic as well for a driver. So I know the karts quite well, work on them all the time. So it's good to just be involved where you can be. So like I say, don't have the money to be racing, but I'm still involved. And that's led to lots of opportunities. I mean, this year, the one class was a bit short on numbers. So it's led to me getting a seat to help with numbers. So I've done the last 2 regionals and looks like I'll be finishing the rest of the season. So just looking for opportunities and just trying to go forwards. The ultimate dream is still to go to a world final, to partake in it. And yeah, the dream is to win it with Claudio there. That would be awesome. So that's the dream, and that's where I'm working towards. So we'll just have to see and just keep working away at it.
Absolutely brilliant. Bradley, just in closing with you, I mean, any advice for youngsters out there? Any like really good advice, what they need to focus on, what they shouldn't be doing? And maybe for the parents, because sometimes the parents play a vital role in the kids not pursuing their passions.
I think the big thing, obviously, take the step and put your kid in to try it out. You're never going to get anywhere if you never try something. So there is the opportunity for the demos. Make contact with the club, get your bum in a seat. And then the thing is, obviously, it's a sport that just brings out so much good in a child and even adults as well. I mean, you've got to be really disciplined. I've got my own kids racing as well, and it really does bring out the best in them, concentration-wise, dedication, all of those type of things. It's something that I can recommend that anybody is just in racing, give it a try. You don't have to have a $1 million budget. You can do it, on a fairly shoestring budget. But it is something trialed. It's a wonderful experience to actually do with your kid as well, whether it be a boy or a girl. It's not gender specific. So yeah, it definitely is something that is worth pursuing.
Okay, that's also some really good advice from a different perspective. And John, maybe finally, I just want to ask you a question. You've heard in the beginning I was talking about the YQ Northlink Gymkhana Witzenberg initiative that we started, where
Yes.
we subsidize bursaries via motorsport, because we love motorsport, we love to drive, and myself and Baden, we do the Gymkhana, so we're the autopies, so we don't have to prepare our cars so much. We just come and drive and wash the cars after the race. Would that be something that I'm not putting you under pressure? I didn't answer from you, but the initiative that we started, we think it's a good initiative. And would it be something that you guys could really maybe think about and using the different aspect of motorsport, be it karting now in your case, and maybe a portion of the entry fee, be it $100 or something? Because I mean, if you look at it, $100 from 80 competitors is 8,000 rand. So that's somebody's that's somebody's bursary, if you know what I'm saying. For a certain, would that be a good idea to try and look at in the future? We've done it. We're going to do it. We're going to continue. Maybe from the karting perspective, something that you could look at.
Yes, Abdul. We look at, previously we used to have a section company called Sacra, and actually that was basically the backbone. Sacra is now closed down. Yes, it is something that the committee has to look at. But I also just wanted to add, the karting is just not for the youngster. I mean, karting is also for the mother. Because I can promise you, they get so involved together, and it becomes a collective sport of the family. And sometimes the mother and father are actually more passionate than the actual driver. But the family sport, and I can promise you that mother, father, sister, brother, being that they're racing or they don't, supports the youngster on the track, and that is absolutely insane to actually see how that progresses. And but on another thing I would just like to add as well is that, karters, there's also corporate karting. Now, corporate karting is that, if they want to come down and also, yes, you're going to be testing down on a Tuesday, but should there be a very large group and that there is corporate karting, and that Brad runs that at the moment and it is available at our track. So if they want to rent some karts and do probably about an hour or whatever, that also happens. So we haven't mentioned about the corporate karting. So I just thought I would basically add that. And then lastly, you spoke about all these champions, and a good perspective on Stewie White. I don't know if you basically heard him. Stewie, there's a big history behind Stewie White, where Stewie started with his karting career, and you take a look at how his family supported him and where he is today. But he's just keep on fighting, and hopefully he will basically get his break. He rides Bentley at the moment. Overseas, he did the Spa 24-hour, and actually did very well. So I'm saying is from our karting perspective, all the karters, Dave Perrell, everybody has come through the karting ranks and that. So it's just not, it is there for people that want to move through the regional, national, and international. But there's also for those competitors who want to come out there, enjoy themselves, and get involved. Because at the end of the day, child that races, if you actually take a look at today where we are with children, if you look at how their school education grows, karting helps education as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's an absolute different perspective on the whole karting arena. Baden, one final comment from you.
Oh, well, my final word I'll use to say that the Le Mans 24 Hours is this month, the 21st to the 22nd of August. Of course, 2 days. It's not this weekend, the next weekend, and the two South Africans in that race are both WPMC karters, I should rather say. David Perrell, and of course Jonathan Aberdeen going to be in that race as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Okay, guys, we kind of 11 minutes over time. We could go on for another 2 hours. There's so much information that's available to us here. But I mean, if we can always just have another show sometime and discuss another aspect of karting. We kind of just touched the surface here. And I just really want to thank everybody for giving up their time tonight. And Claudio, especially thanks to you. Well, actually to Ash first, to Ashfaq for telling me to speak to Claudio. And also for you telling me, speak to Tristan, speak to Bradley, speak to John. Brilliant. That's what it's about. It's about networking, about getting the word out there. And thank you so much, guys, for being here tonight, and the viewers for taking the time to watch us. And it's on the Facebook page, on the YouTube channel. And all the best for you guys for the future for karting. And maybe myself, you know what? I was just thinking about something now. I've never really seen a kart at Gymkhana. It'll be quite interesting.
It has happened before, long ago.
Yeah, before my time. So maybe one day we can invite a couple of the karters to come and try a Gymkhana that we're doing, we'll see how it goes, and take it from there. But anyhow, guys, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Have a great week ahead, and all the best for your careers and your businesses and your chairmanship, John, and Claudia, with you guys as well, with your businesses and stuff. And thanks for being on the show tonight, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Bye.
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 Thanks a lot.